Good? Okay. Well, thank y'all for joining DFW SEM today. We are starting with a new streaming software. We're always looking for ways to make these meetings better for our virtual members. So thank you for your patience. We are doing this all with you in mind. DFW SEM, for those of you who are new, we're going to try and advance the slide. Let's see here. So we are in our 18th year of search engine marketing. This wouldn't be possible without a number of people. Can you go ahead and try? So we have our treasurer, Bart Peters, secretary, Jenna Williams, our VP of State of Search and Hospitality, Chris O'Connor, our VP of Membership and Registration, Kevin Adams, our VP of Sponsorship, Jordan Pearson, our VP of Communications, Casey Watson, and our board member at large and #1 virtual fan, Tim Shane. If you want to help make DFW SEM better, go ahead and participate on a community with us. You can talk to a board member or email info@dfwsem.org. And a big thanks to City Central, who helped sponsor our in-person meetings. This is a great co-working space if you're interested, and DFW SEM members get a discount. So let us know if you're interested. We have the slide every month, okay? State of Search is coming. And there's no exception this month, except, we've got a bunch of great speakers. As a matter of fact, I wasn't able to fit all the great speakers that we have on this page, but hopefully these are some friendly faces that you recognize. We've got a fantastic lineup. We're finalizing the agenda, confirming speakers. You don't want to miss out on this. And remember, DFW SEM members save more. So I think our ticket prices are $247. Am I? $297. But for members, it's $247 because you get the $50 off. And then we've also got some virtual options in case you're like me and you still really like your pajamas. In truth, I will actually be coming up from Houston just to attend this conference because it has been a lifelong goal to meet Joy Hawkins, and I'm going to get up the courage and tell her hello. So if you want to join me and also tell Joy Hawkins hello in person, come to a State of Search. And then we've also got two amazing keynotes confirmed, Bill Hartzer and Jeremy Vest. You don't really mention SEO without hearing Bill Hartzer's name come up at least once. And Jeremy Vest, I was just informed he has, 4 clients that now all have over 100,000 subscribers on YouTube. So this guy knows his stuff. If you are looking to dominate both traditional SEO and video SEO, this is the conference to attend. So stateofsearch.org, go register now. We've got a limited number of tickets, so you want to make sure that you get in early. And I mentioned that members save more. So here are our different membership options. So you could get $100 virtual membership and get $50 off State of Search. Your membership is almost paid for itself at that point. If you're looking for a job or you're hiring, take advantage of our job board. Email info@dfwsem, and we'd be happy to get that up there. And then we've got a couple of great presentations coming up. Tatiana is going to talk to us about secrets of a powerful brand from a creative and UX perspective. And then in August, John McAlpin is going to come talk to us about how the future of search is not keyword optimization, it's entity optimization. But right now we've got Chris Silversmith. I think that the word the board used when I spoke about Chris was, wow, Julie, your face just lights up. So I am absolutely pumped to have him here. I will be live tweeting and hopefully learning more things about Twitter, but I will turn it over to you, Chris.
Oh, wow. Thanks. Thank you so much, Julie. Let's see.
Okay, got your HDMI cord here.
Just the usual amount of fumbling, and then we can, let's see. I think right here. Let's see. Try to make sure I don't unplug in the middle of the whole thing. There we go. Let's see. Well, let's see. Didn't mean to. Let's see. Does this work? Let's see. There we go. All right. Well, thanks for that introduction. That was fantastic. I was afraid of what they might say that the board said about me. It's been a number of years since I was on the board at DFW SCM, and it was always a great organization. I loved my time doing that. I've gotten so busy, and I got married 4 years ago, and I haven't been able to do that sort of thing since then. So I'm here to talk about Twitter optimizations for search and social media. Just a quick couple of notes about my background. You might have read some of my stuff on Search Engine Land. I've long been a writer there, and I've recently started writing again and a little bit more quantity, and we'll see how that goes or how fast I become overwhelmed with biting off more than I can chew. Let's see, I got into search engine marketing 25 years ago for Verizon when I moved to Dallas at superpages.com pages, and that term doesn't mean very much anymore. The search engine pretty much obviated that this line, and I foresaw that happening and managed to get out of it and worked for a couple of search engine marketing agencies, and then I founded my own agency 10 years ago. In addition, one thing that I don't talk about a whole lot, I work as an expert witness on a lot of legal cases now. Those cases typically involve search engine optimization, as you might expect. Sometimes it involves internet technologies of various kinds, online mapping, a lot of defamation related to my online reputation management type stuff, and a lot of trademark infringement. Some of my clients have included Pods, Enterprises, GoDaddy, Versace, Starbucks, and Adidas. Most recently, I worked for a client that was suing Twitter. One kind of interesting aspect of working as a as a expert legal witness is that you get privy to a whole lot of stuff that happens inside of major corporations. While I knew a lot of stuff that went on within Verizon, I get to see little windows into stuff that happens at the corporations that my clients sue as part of my work. A lot of that information comes under a court protective order that I'm assigned, and so I can't reveal everything that I learn in those in getting that information. But at the same time, I learn a lot of things, and by context, see a lot of other stuff. And so hopefully you'll get a little bit of information that's valuable to you that I got out of my little work with Twitter. Very happy that my client was able to settle that case with Twitter, probably because of the Elon Musk acquisition talks that are going on. They kind of to resolve a lot of outstanding risks and things. One way that I got into social media was through doing optimization work for Verizon. That's really how I got introduced to it. I did lots of optimization work for Superpages. My leadership there gave me kind of unprecedented ability to direct search engine optimization, and a lot of the other departments had to involve me in whatever projects were coming up just so that it wouldn't impact our program. Our program pulled in millions of dollars, and I won the Employee Excellence Award while I was there. But when you have gotten a massive amount of traffic and you've grown and grown, super huge, then the next thing that happens is the executives start to say, well, what can you do for me now? And so you reach a point where you realize once you get to the top, there's really only one direction you can go. But at the same time, I was intent upon doing everything I could to keep maximizing traffic and to learn more ways to optimize. And there's almost always you can do. And so that's what led me to looking at search engines. So Google was my gateway drug into Twitter. I started looking at what new and emerging ranking factors there would be for search engine optimization. And lo and behold, right around 2004, the Facebook came out for Ivy League universities, and it segued. They changed it to Facebook and broadened it out to universities and schools. And then they really, to roughly in the same time frame also, but then they banged open Facebook and made it available to the general public, and it grew really rapidly. So about 2007, Facebook allowed widespread indexing of profiles by search engines, and Twitter right around 2009 made a Firehose deal. The Firehose is Twitter's feed, a dedicated feed of tons and tons of data, very rapid, tons of it, giant, it would choke a horse. That Firehose is something that Google took and used, and Bing took it too, so that they could show recent tweets and such. But earlier, even like right around 2007 or so, I was becoming interested in social media as a potential for ranking factors for Google. And that's really what attracted me into it. What might Google and other search engines use? Oh, it is a little tight. It's under the wheel. There we go. Let's see if we can recapture. All right. Sorry about that. We'll try not to trip over it. So I started looking at search engine ranking factors in context of social media and testing stuff. And I was just super interested in all that. And that's why I got into Facebook and Twitter. So the question back then was, do search engines use social media signals? Everybody that was anybody started asking this question, including Danny Sullivan. And he actually talked to members of both search engines and got little bits of information. They were always very sneaky about it. You know, they were like, oh, we use a little bit here and there. We just kind of, you know, salt and pepper our sauce with it. But they didn't really tell you a whole lot about what they were specifically doing. You could glean from what they said, but it was clear that it was just so compelling a source of data that the search engines would be using it in some form or fashion. And here and today, they definitely are. So what are ways that Google can assess Twitter for rankings? Starting years ago, I started analyzing Twitter to try to figure this out because, of course, the search engine representatives were saying we don't use proprietary signals from social media to do ranking stuff. So what do they use then? A lot of people are like, oh, social media doesn't help with SEO, et cetera, because it's all no followed. Well, so how does Google take the stuff and rank it then? So the answer to that was years ago via their own internal link graph. And so just a handful of years ago, I've even spoken about this at the State of Search and at other DFW SEM meetings and other conferences, but you can see that Google was able to access a lot of data from there. They were able to access profiles and tweets, and from that, they were able to conduct some link analysis just like they do with the rest of the web. And so based on that, they could rank quite a bit of stuff. But there's stuff that goes beyond that. So let's take a look at a tweet right now. This is from Whole Foods Market. I love using them as an example just because they do fantastic social media, and their stuff is fun to look at. But if you take a tweet and analyze it like I do, then you take it and you look at the code and you go, okay, well, here's a link in it. And historically, those have been no followed, et cetera. There's kind of been an interesting sea change that's happened just in the last few years that you may not be aware of. And I may be, I don't know, I may be, I can't even recall everything that's happened in the last few years, what with the pandemic and all, announcing this for the first time. So you look at the links and you discover now that they're followed. How many of you knew that? It's kind of a major sea change. The links on Twitter, this is a link that's posted within a tweet, are now followed. Previously, when I looked at this, they were no followed. And on top of that, you can see that they put all their links through a link shortener so they don't take up as many characters and stuff, t.co. And you analyze that, and you could see that it went through some redirects and whatnot, and that really any chain of transferring of PageRank and stuff might have been broken. But now those links are followed, and so it's very interesting to look at and kind of figure out. I think it's such a major thing that I have resurrected the blink tag for this. Twitter links are now followed. The t.co domain, so you take the link and you put it through an HTTP header sniffer to see what it's doing. And of course, it redirects to the actual link at WholeFoodsMarket.com. And it does a 301 redirect, which is perfect for passing PageRank. But, does PageRank pass through that domain? Well, lo and behold, the robots.txt now has a specific rule just for Google allowing it through there. So Googlebot is not disallowed while all of their user agents are. That's kind of interesting, isn't it? Looks like in Google, not only is Google taking the Firehose feed, which they pay a huge amount of money for. They are a major data partner of Twitter's, but they seem to be collaborating just a bit. It looks like Twitter's very friendly towards them. I find that very interesting. So we go back to this, and there's other stuff here too that I had long looked at. Retweets are followed. Likes are followed. You go to profiles, and this is the thing that we've always obsessed on: following and followers. Does Google see those? Does Google take and use those numbers? Google has always said they do not use those numbers, and I don't believe they do. But more than that, you can look at it. They don't analyze the followers and following pages and listings of the followers and following, because that's specifically disallowed in twitter.com/text. Likes, however, are allowed. Google looks at those. Very interesting. So what are some other ways, aside from analyzing the internal link structure of Twitter? And now we can see that there's a whole lot more openness with those links going on. But you take a website like the Top Gun website, and a lot of these websites have social media sharing icons, and those icons frequently are linked to social media accounts for those companies, organizations, in this case, the film Twitter account. That is one way that Google finds those Twitter profiles and indexes them. And so that's kind of a little major piece that you want. And I just go to the trouble of saying that because I've had so many different newbie clients come to me and they're like, oh, we can't do the XYZ, our Twitter doesn't show up, et cetera. And I look at their website and they've installed a WordPress theme that has social media icons, and did anybody ever bother to click on them because they don't have the links set up? Really kills my soul. You can't get your Twitter profile indexed if Google doesn't find it, but linking to it is something that helps in Google. So some other ways that Google takes content from Twitter are the tweets. You can see tweets showing up in the search results, and this happens with some frequency. You can link directly to tweets, and that's one of the ways that tweets get in there. So here's a little messages that this young kid named Carter Wilkerson did some years ago with Wendy's. He messaged them and said, yo, how many retweets for a free chicken nuggets? And they're like, okay, kid, 18 million. And so he's like, consider it done. So he posts that screen grab of his messages with them. He's like, please help me, please. A man needs his nugs. And lo and behold, some people, a lot of people reshared it, talking about it, that Wendy's rewarded him with it and played along with it. He also launched a website, Nugs for Carter, emblem on it and donated the proceeds to charity. He's just a really great person. So that sort of thing is really interesting. But you see this article from Delish. They took his tweet and Wendy's tweets and they embedded it in the article. So that's a form of linking. And that is one of the things that enables his tweet to rank till today. If you look in Majestic for this, the external inbound links for that tweet are like 313. Some of them are, fresh ones even 28. But that's not a huge number, but the organizations, the websites linking to them are major news websites and stuff, entertainment websites. And so those carry a lot of page rank, of course. And so like this is yet another example from NPR, their article, they embedded as tweet. Embeds are a form of link, and it's a sign that the content is interesting and the content is compelling, and it's a kind of endorsement. Google counts those. And so you can see in the search results, when you're searching for some of the keywords associated with this stuff, it shows up there. If you do any tweeting whatsoever, you've probably figured out my tweets don't all get indexed. Well, they don't have to all get indexed, but if there's no links to them and there's not a lot of popularity signals with them, Google's unlikely to put them in the search results. If you have some tweets that are particularly interesting to you that might help with your business in some way, you can link to them, you can embed them, and that sort of stuff will start helping to build the ranking factor so it'll show up in search. And in some cases, you can get a tweet to rank where you can't get other content. So it's a really valuable thing to do. So there's another way that Google can assess Twitter for rankings, and that is analyzing the fire hose. So Google analyzes those tweets. They said that from the very beginning. They're still doing it. And in fact, some research from 2015, I know it's old, but it's Stone Temple research, Stone Temple and Moz's research project. They tried linking from tweets to a few different things that they posted, and lo and behold, those things got indexed more quickly. I believe that that's still happening with Google to this day. They may be looking at additional factors too before they choose whether to keep it in the index or not. So you might want to have links and embeds to those tweets in addition to posting it to Twitter. But this is one way that they're discovering new content and stuff that they're posting for recency, such as in news. What if Twitter brings back the no files now have links that are followed? That's really cool. Tweets now have links that are followed. What if Twitter tomorrow goes, oh, Silver Smith posted about this? That is possible. They don't really like me. But if they say, oh, Chris Silver Smith just revealed this big exploit that there's, followed links in Twitter, they could go back to no follow. But do we really have to even worry about that? 2019, as you know, Google announced a couple of other parameters. You can flag links as not just no follow them, but sponsored or UGC for user generated content. Technically, if you wanted to flag those links in Twitter, you would use no follow plus UGC. So what if Twitter did that? Well, there's good reason to think that Google was already analyzing links from in there. And Google has always said that they could choose to use a signal if it was valuable to them. And this most recent thing in 2019 where they said, oh, let's use these, they announced in the article with it that they can treat that as hints. So they're essentially going, we're taking that into consideration, but we are still going to count some data from no followed links and stuff. They probably always were, probably for sites such as Twitter, Facebook, and Wikipedia, sites that have a huge amount of really valuable information. They probably have been using it all along to some degree. So invoking the Twitter carousel in Google SERPs, that's something I've talked about. I'm not going to spend a whole lot of time in this presentation, but it's very beneficial to get you more exposure, particularly for your brand name stuff. You can get Twitter carousels to show up for hashtags as well, especially for trending topics and stuff. But particularly for your brand, it can be super beneficial. Of course, I'm coming at it from the standpoint of trying to make businesses look better in search results. And this takes up a nice amount of room. It starts to expand how much of the area you control in the search results, and it makes other stuff look a little less visible. So I love doing this. It's really pretty easy to do. So here's the embedded carousel of tweets for Whole Foods Market. If you did a search for their name, you can see that they have a few tweets there. They're actually really beautiful tweets just because they use some fun emojis, and one of them has a video and others have images, so they can be very attractive as well. And you can be conscious of that as you tweet if this is one of your goals. But how do you get the carousel to invoke? So have a few 100 plus followers, et cetera. You don't actually have to have a ton of followers to do it. You need to have your Twitter profile indexed. Google needs to associate your Twitter profile with your name searches. You should tweet consistently. Don't do it for a month, give up, or don't do it, go, oh, I've got the Twitter carousel, and then stop. Or it's going to go away because it's not recent and Google will stop showing it. Tweet frequently. This is maybe one of the number one factors for it. So making sure that your profile shows up for your name search on page one. If it does, then you have a very good chance of getting the Twitter carousel. Of course, there's some other little things that go into getting your Twitter profile on page one in Google, like having a username that matches pretty closely with your actual brand name that people are searching upon. That can help a lot. And other things with your Twitter profile as well, the username that's displayed, the description, all of that stuff, the fact that your website points to it, the fact that it points back to the website, those are confirmation signals for Google. But tweeting frequently, once you have it in the first page of search results, you're likely to be able to invoke the Twitter carousel. Have some engagement with those tweets. If you don't have engagement, it may not show up. So moving on to Twitter specific stuff, this is the area that I found super, super interesting this year to analyze. And I had never really thought to go through it. There are some other people that have written articles about it. I went through and studied the whole thing by studying a lot of Twitter's patents directly. I then read also some of their research papers and some of their blog posts and stuff. And then after that, I went and looked at some stuff that other people have written. Most of the stuff that other folks have written has kind of been a little bit lightweight social media type blog posts. Here's some quick things you can do. I tried to go through and itemize and list out comprehensively all the ranking factors. I'm not going through every single one here tonight. I have a big definitive article that I'm planning for Search Engine Land that's already been submitted. Hopefully it'll come out in a few days, maybe a couple of weeks. Their editorial schedule is a little bit intense, so it could be 2 weeks. But in any case, you'll see even more ranking factors in that blog post. And I might whisper one or two just for those of you that have attended this meeting than what I'm showing in the presentation. So watch for my article that's coming out, and hopefully pay attention to if you find what I've got here interesting. So what Twitter started out with way back in 2006, you may recall, was the reverse chronological feed. So basically, the most recent tweets that are appearing from all of the people you follow would show up at the top, and after that, the ones before would sequentially show up. And that was the tradition. This chronological feed, the reverse chronological feed, is baked into just about everything that Twitter does ranking-wise. So it's still here today in large form because people loved it so much and people wigged out when they started changing around order a little bit and introducing stuff out of order, et cetera. But this is still baked into the process really heavily. So recent stuff is major for the Twitter algorithm, of course. And this is like just kind of, I think, fictitious tweets as though they were, from the Cuban Missile Crisis, as though the players in that were tweeting. It's a really cute idea, but this sort of thing actually happens today with major political figures. So you can see each of those tweets was posted sequentially. It used to be the only way they were shown. Twitter had to switch to an algorithm model in order to expose all of its users to more stuff and to gain engagement so that you stick with it. It's real easy to go on there. Oh, I want to tweet about this. Oh, I want to look at this tweet or look up something. And then you're stuck because they've drawn you in through their algorithm. And that's what they want. So Twitter's algorithmic feed, there's some things that they have said about it for a little while. Some other people have said the same things. The top ranked interesting tweets are now shown at the top. So that's not exactly the case, but that's what they said just a couple of years ago when they switched to algorithm view. And this is a quote from one of their engineers. He said, right after gathering all tweets based on who you follow, each is scored by a relevance model. The model score predicts how interesting and engaging a tweet would be specifically to you. A set of highest scoring tweets is then shown at the top of your timeline with the remainder shown directly below. And then they also had, in case you missed it, tweets from just a little further back in the timeline that they think you might find particularly interesting and might be inclined to interact with, and then all the remaining tweets in reverse chronological order. But what I've noted is that they have increasingly blended this, not necessarily in chronological order. And there's some other reasons why some stuff will bubble back up to the top, especially after, like, you've seen a tweet show up in chronological order, and then someone that you follow has interacted with it, and you like the stuff that they interact with, it'll show back up again. So increasingly, these kind of little rough categories are going away, and it's very blended. Twitter uses an amazing amount of machine learning to predict interesting tweets. You look at Twitter and you look at your feeds and stuff, and it looks, pretty simple. It's understating exactly what's going on behind the scenes by a huge amount. So the Twitter algorithm takes in data. They use prediction models to train their system. They try to figure out what's going to happen. They try it out. The model evaluation and refreshing, they evaluate whether it worked or not, and they create models. Now, if you read my article from just a few years ago on on Google's machine learning processes for trying to create models for different types of content, and I called that something like reputation as a ranking factor. Those models are very abstracted. And so based on the great breadth of signals that there can be for ranking something, there can be a different model for each different type of query. And that works the same for Twitter as it does it works similarly for Twitter as it does for Google's ranking algorithm. And so what you do is you go, okay, for this type of web page, how should that rank? Does it rank better or others for the same type of query, et cetera? Well, they create different abstracted models, and they'll pull in some of the ranking factors, but not necessarily all of them, the ones particular to that topic or query, and create a model for ranking it. And the weightings for that model can vary from other types of queries and topics. So it becomes super complicated fast. A ranking factor that helps a whole lot with one item may not help at all with another. And those particular models that are created, they're very abstracted. You don't necessarily know what goes on the inside of them. And so Twitter engineers themselves might not know exactly to the nth degree how each of the factors is used relative to one another within those models because of the way that they have been produced. So if you wanted to rank something in Twitter, you figure out, whoops, pressing the wrong button. You take a tweet. Let's say that Twitter's system is analyzing to see what sort of interestingness ranking factors should be applied to a particular tweet. Well, they take into account all this type of criteria and they create that, they match it to an abstracted ranking model, and then they can come up with a score of potential interestingness. So here's an example for a query for Sesame Street. Here's another item that shows up for Sesame Street, but it's different. The other one is like, celebrating Pride. This one is announcing or talking about or reviewing the Sesame Street, the musical that's coming out. So there are two different types of tweets, but they target kind of the same queries, the same very similar topics. But each one of them, because of the components of the tweet and because of the accounts that are tweeting about them, there could be a different ranking model produced for each one of these. And so that's how a lot of this stuff, and they're creating more and more specific types of ranking criteria for specific types of queries and trying to incorporate stuff for new and emerging topics. So this all becomes a really complicated thing. But for those of you that have been around for a while, the term interestingness might ring a bell because years ago, Yahoo developed an interestingness algorithm, and that is what was used with Flickr. And this interestingness word is used in a lot of Twitter's patents. So basically, a lot of Twitter's algorithm, the DNA of it comes from the original interestingness algorithm that was used with Yahoo and Flickr back as far back as 2006, probably even earlier, because I think 2006 may be the registration date of the patent. So Twitter has taken a lot of the concepts from that interestingness algorithm and they've evolved it further. As you might imagine, it takes into more and different factors because Flickr was pretty specific to images and even later video content. Pardon me. So Twitter takes into account a whole lot more factors than what were mentioned in the interestingness algorithm patent for Yahoo. They, of course, like I described, take into account machine learning iterations. And so they get very specific types of rankings for different types of queries and people and types of content. They also incorporate a lot of natural language processing, NLP, in order to try to understand and incorporate an understanding of what's being posted in tweets. Rapid processing and rapid presentation features, Twitter is obsessed with doing things fast. For a lot of their processes are built around doing this. So do they have some long-running deep analysis processes that take a while? Yes. But they also have some stuff that they've developed that can do things very rapidly so that once something is tweeted, it can appear and be shown to people along with some interestingness ranking ability really rapidly. So what are the Twitter algorithm ranking factors? There's some obvious ones that you can imagine right off the top of your head, and you're right. There's maybe, I counted 35 to 40 factors. There's really probably a whole lot more. And even among the factors that I'm going to go through tonight, you can imagine and construe that there's other factors that go on within them. So it can be very like how Google likes to describe there are 200 ranking factors with 50 vectors, up to 50 vectors within each ranking factor. There can be a lot of permutations and a lot of variation. So that's no exception to this. Twitter's algorithm is very similar in that it's very, very sophisticated. It has that kind of level of complexity going on with it. So what are some of the factors? There are a number of factors specific to the authors of tweets, and you can use interchangeably the word author or account for this purpose. The age of the Twitter account is one item. Super recent accounts might not be trusted as much or might not be as popular. Your actual age. So, you know, you add your birthday to Twitter profiles frequently. You don't have to. But Twitter really tries to push that, and they use it. It's used in the ranking algorithm. So imagine that your audience is super young people. Well, your own birthday might affect that. I hate saying that. I have the gray hair. I might not, be as relevant on the age basis. There's a lot of other ranking factors too, but age is something that Twitter talks about in its patents quite a bit. Account location. So of course you have the location associated with your profile that you can customize for your profile information. That's fairly obvious. So topics involving local stuff or organizations or mentions of accounts and organizations and stuff that are local places, accounts associated with those places or close by, that's potentially a ranking factor. So there's quite a lot of accounts, especially back when Twitter was first getting up to speed and stuff, that people put in funny stuff, fictitious locations like this one that has Narnia as their location. I don't particularly even think that helps if you're tweeting about Narnia. In fact, I think it could hurt you, especially if you're doing local search marketing type stuff. If you're trying to tweet and get a local audience, then having a fictitious name would really hurt you. You don't want to do that. So there's other interesting stuff that can go into a location. So Twitter, not all that long ago, rolled out this local directory. And I associated my business with it when they offered this to me on a special pilot program. And basically, they're trying to build local directory information and become a little bit more specific for local info and local businesses. I found it super interesting that they're doing that. And so you can see that my account also shows that it's marketing agency. That's a little special criteria that can show up if you're a member of this program. And of course, you get your hours of operation. You can provide contact info, and it will give directions. But one of the takeaways of this is if you're in that program and your account is associating itself with the local directory stuff, then this information will start going into ranking algorithm relevancy factors. And so if you have a nationwide business, then this potentially would not be something you want to do. I do have nationwide customers and worldwide customers, but this doesn't really matter for getting my business, but it's interesting to me for research purposes. So take that into account, that location is one of their ranking factors. It's mentioned in a number of their patents. So who follows you and who you follow? Of course, everyone thinks of that when they think of what might make my tweets stand out and show up more. So Twitter definitely pays attention to that. Interestingly, what they're really paying attention to also is the number of followers. So it is a numbers racket, and the number of accounts your account follows. So the reason they're looking at that is they're interested in the ratio value. So in a lot of instances, this correlates with whether the account is considered interesting, whether it is really popular or not. So back in the past, people used to do a whole lot of you follow me, I'll follow you. This kind of mutual following type stuff is maybe contraindicated now if you want your Twitter activities to get more promotion power. So the number of tweets posted per time period, that's an important thing. I'll add to that also the whether you have tweeted recently. Have you taken months off? That's not going to show up very much. If you've taken weeks or days off, that's not going to show up as much as if you post frequently. So there is a reward for using Twitter and using it frequently beyond being able to potentially invoke the Twitter carousel in Google. How am I doing for time? I don't have my, okay. Oh, I went too far. So frequency of tweets is important. Topics associated with the account. So this is something they're looking at quite a bit. So there's a number of different ways that you may have associated topics with your account. Primarily, you're doing that overtly, like when you have set up the account, or later on you go into your account settings, you can choose some topics, you can remove some topics, but they're also associating topics with your account based on what you're tweeting and what you're interacting with. So even if you weren't interested in Disney films, if you post about that a lot, if you like a lot of that, if you comment on that, if you retweet that, that topic is going to get associated with your account, and they're going to show you more stuff associated with that. In addition, if you are known for a particular topic, when you post on that topic, people interested in that topic are more likely to see it. If you're posting, let's say that you have lots of followers that like Disney films and stuff, and you post about Disney films, they're more likely to see it than if you posted about something completely off topic, like terrible slasher horror films or something. So like I said, there's a number of different ways you can associate topics. You might want to go through and check those at the account level. You can go into your account settings and look at those. Twitter has pushed this a handful of years ago when they were introducing more topic views, such as when you look at in your cell phone app, the topics that are of interest to you. It's increasingly compelling, and there's rankings within those as well. These ranking factors act a little differently within the topics. They're featuring the topics a whole lot more, but all the other ranking factors still apply within there as well. Data about tweets. So I went over a number of ranking factors associated with Twitter accounts, Twitter authors, but then factors about tweets themselves are also ranking factors. So tweets from accounts you follow is something that's interesting. It's more interesting to you than to people that, of course, are not following the accounts. So I just found this kind of interesting. This guy is he has one of the accounts on Twitter that follows some of the most accounts. He's following 4.1 million accounts. You can bet that he doesn't see or interact with a whole lot of the stuff that the people he's following post. He's got so much Twitter activity stuff that his Twitter works for him really well. But most cases, you don't want to do that. That's kind of an unusual thing. If you're trying to promote stuff, you don't want to follow that many accounts because you can't realistically be interested in all the stuff that they're posting. And you want to cultivate the people you're following to be kind of oriented in the topics you're interested in so that you see content that you're interested in. Recency of the tweet is a major thing. As I mentioned before, chronological stuff is major in the algorithm. Tweets including an image, potentially more interesting than tweets that just have text. But again, because of the customization ranking models according to different topics and different types of queries or different types of interests, maybe an image doesn't help you rank. So in some cases, images help, and in a lot of cases they do. Google says that images content is very important to people. That's why they have it in search. And videos are the same. Tweets, including a video, generally much more compelling. I don't go into it here, but each of these types of items has other criteria that you can imagine that are used to assess whether an image or whether a video is more or less compelling. Things like resolution, things like how many people have viewed it, did they view it all the way through in the terms of a video? Is it something that has been shared before that's really popular? Pardon me, I've had a lot of allergy going on since Memorial Day. So what are other factors about tweets? There's quite a number of factors about tweets themselves. So of course, likes. Likes is a major signal. Probably also the speed at which a tweet gets likes once it's posted. Retweets, similar. Clicks to hashtags in the tweet is an indicator, and it also, I should say, associates that tweet with the topic that's associated with that hashtag. Clicks to the account itself is an indicator of interest in the tweet. Clicks to links in the tweet. This tweet doesn't have a link in it, but for those tweets that do have links, how many clicks have gone to that? Shares, how many times has the tweet been shared? And in addition, once you share, there's a few different ways to share, but does it get like embedded on that page, get views? How popular is that page potentially? Who knows if they're looking at that? Replies to the tweet. Oh, here's a reply to that. This is a famous, if you are familiar with it, one of the most famous images posted on Twitter. Ellen at the Academy Awards. I mean, the Oscars posted this selfie image that Bradley Cooper took and had quite a number of stars in it. So it just got reshared and liked and stuff fantastically. But one of the comments on it was from The Sims, where they recreated the image with Sim people. So I thought that was pretty fun. And that reply itself also got a lot of interaction, which, probably bubbles back up towards the original thing that it was replying to. Did I skip anything of the things I've shown? So other items that can be of interest to tweets in terms of rankings, the impressions the tweet gets, detail expands. Not all tweets can be viewed completely without clicking on them to expand the whole thing. New follows of the account from the tweet. Likelihood of interactions. So they're predicting the likelihood of interactions with the tweet, and that's done on a personal basis. So you're more likely to be shown a tweet that's similar to tweets that you've interacted with in the past. Previous interactions with that tweet's author. Topics associated with the tweet, of course. I've mentioned that in 5 million different ways so far. Phrase classifications. So what's the meaning of the phrase, and is the phrase more interesting? They have assembled, most likely, some data associated with specific phrases and common phrases and phrases that are emerging to see which ones are more likely to cause people to reshare and interact with the tweets that they are. So the takeaway for that, of course, is watch what works for others and see whether there's unique language and stuff, and maybe imitate some of that language when you're doing stuff on the same types of topics. There are quite a number of spam factors. In fact, I ran out of time, or I would have gone through spam factors. And the reason is that if you're accidentally, unconsciously associating your account, your tweets with spam in some form or fashion, then it's going to get downgraded in the ranking factors and interestingness. And some of the spamminess factors are things that might be surprising. It's not just spam necessarily, it expands upon that. So things like if you've been blocked recently by other people. So if you use your account to sometimes do professional stuff, and then sometimes you're posting on political stuff or attacking someone, and then they block you, those blocks could factor in to making everything else you're posting a little less visible. So it's really good advice to be very professional with the accounts you want to be professional with. If you want to go off and have a personal account, you might do that. However, I would warn about doing that on the same device where you're trying to do professional work. They are looking at some stuff like using device fingerprinting, if you're familiar with what that is. Basically, they can tell what types of things are associated with the browser or with the device, and those can create a very unique fingerprint in combination with the IP address or the device ID so that they can identify the device even if you're switching accounts. So you may want to be very careful about what you post from the same device. I'll mention something else that I was going to hold back in secret since there's not a whole lot of people here. I was going to hold it back for my article, but the things that one of their patents mentions is that they can see the other apps and when they were installed on your device. And some of the things that their patents mention that they might be able to use would be things like gender. You can construe other things like whether people are interested in weightlifting and exercise based on the apps on their phone. And they mention that in their patents. So you can construe yet other stuff from that too, like they could also potentially sense sexual orientation based on whether you have dating apps of various kinds installed. So that's very interesting in terms of what they might be using in order to do interestingness rankings and relevancy for you personally, and making stuff show up that you'd be more interested in. That's very unusual, but it's in the patents. And I did a little bit of looking. I was like, oh, surely there couldn't be that kind of data easily accessible by them. But there is some indication that, at least on Androids, and I haven't done any kind of thorough research, that you could access this. And the reason being that for app developers, they like to be informed about what other apps are on the phones so that they can figure out why conflicts are happening and why the applications aren't working right. So there may be data passed to them. They also talked about this in terms of trying to sense for bots. A bot account could be associated with a computer or with a mobile device. And if it's only got the Twitter app on it and no other apps, it looks a little suspect to them. So they're like, bot apps generally aren't loading dating apps and other types of apps, and they're generally not using those types of things. They're just, using Twitter to try to imitate human usage and post lots of stuff. So there's a considerable amount of sophistication that goes into bot detection and sidelining spam accounts. Most of the stuff that you're familiar with would be things like posting way too frequently. Too many posts in succession starts to look less human and more machine. I've had friends and I've seen accounts where people have used online scheduling, have made a mistake, have too many things posted too fast, and they get locked. In some cases, you can have your entire account deleted, suspended, never to be recovered again for doing some of that stuff. But if you're doing stuff just a little bit fast, you can start getting degrees of suspension, like being locked out until you solve a CAPTCHA. There are other signals that are likely in use that you probably should take into account that are hallmarks of spammers, things like not having a profile pic set up, an avatar, using Twitter's default profile pic, not having a cover image. That's not as strong as the profile pic lack thereof. What are some others? There may be another one that I have a list. Let's see. Of course, posting spammy links, and those get assessed probably by domains. But a lot of it goes into how recent the account is. So if you have a number of these factors that start to add up into the profile that matches, it's pattern matching is what's being done. If you have like a post that you're posting that lots of other people have posted, then you may want to be careful about that. And I have run into that myself when posting on behalf of large numbers of different clients. If you're posting a quote, like for a particular holiday, if you used that same quote on multiple different accounts, then that can start to look very suspicious to Twitter in terms of, is there really a human behind it? I have set up a lot of Twitter accounts on behalf of clients because I do reputation management, and they are real people, and they frequently will take up and use the Twitter app and their account after I turn it over to them. But you have to be more and more careful, and it's more and more difficult for those of us that are managing Twitter accounts on behalf of numbers of other people, because it starts to look funny when you log out and log in to other accounts from the same machine. And I've also had contractors set up accounts for me, and they're in other geolocations in the US, and then I suddenly log into the account from here, then that's like, a major danger signal to them. They got very, very aggressive with this after the, I'm going to say the 2016 presidential election. The bot activity was just so high that they've tried to sideline bots. And of course, it's an arms race. But there are things that you should be careful of, and automation is one of them. So, if everything you post is through scheduling software, through Hootsuite, through Sprinkler, through other scheduling software, then maybe you want to log in every so often as a human, some things, and retweet some things and interact. Interspersing that can help increase their confidence that your account is not a spam account. So it makes sure that you don't actually accidentally get dinged a little bit in interestingness because of automation. I think that's pretty much all I had. I don't know how much time we have, but I could do a few questions. Thanks.
So everybody always says frequency. So what's frequency? 5 times a day, 1 time a
So
day?
good question.
I mean, I'm sure it depends on the business, but you know, I always hated that frequency. What does that mean?
It's so funny because I've set up a new account on behalf of a client and then posted 7 times and then had to do a CAPTCHA. But that was because it was a brand new account. If you've been around a while, then they have a higher confidence level. If you're not abruptly posting about Viagra after not doing it for 10 days, there's things like that that start to look potentially like a spammer. But I think it depends on, of course, how many followers, how much engagement you get and stuff, how many people are trying to tweet to you, like if you're doing customer service. It's very variable. And that's based on what you're using it for. Are you using it for customer service stuff? Are you using it just for promotion stuff? Are you using it for a little bit of engagement with your audience and to announce new stuff? It depends. And so you want to go for the happy medium. I like to post, if it's for a business account, once every business day. I like to post for holidays too, just because people like that and it makes the brand look good. I don't, I, for a number of my clients, individuals that are doing professional work on Twitter will post a day. Could post a few times more if you're doing conversational type posting. The more interaction you're doing with your audience, the more likely they are to look at your stuff and interact with it. And so that kind of has benefits. So if you had tons of time and just could obsess with Twitter, you could do it all the time. American Airlines, I don't know, they have like ridiculous numbers, a team of people, a custom built app to interact with Twitter so that they can handle all the customer service stuff that comes through. They may have 5 people, they may have 20 people on board at one time handling, thousands of tweets coming through. So an interesting thing to be aware of is that, once you start reaching that kind of volume numbers, there's the profile of the account starts looking more and more like it's doing it with a bot. Whereas with American Airlines, they do have humans behind it, but the volume is huge. So they get whitelisted by Twitter. There are whitelists. There are blacklists too, but they are whitelisted into not being halted automatically by their policing algorithms for posting too many things in a short period of time. You might get halted briefly if you tried to post, 50 things in 1 hour. At the same time, if you're posting stuff and it looks like you're a human user, it's generally gonna work. Like if you're live posting during conference stuff, I've posted lots of stuff before, retweeted and interacted. All those interactions help a little bit to make sure it's not just, we're just broadcasting. But if you're interacting with some other stuff, it looks human. So it's like, oh yeah, human. Oh yeah, human. So they're constantly looking for whether you're human or not doing stuff. If you posted, I don't know. I don't know if I saw anything about posting so frequently that you didn't get, that you got downgraded in interestingness. I think that there is a trade-off in terms of audience fatigue. So if you have a handful of people, you post a few, no one's interacting, maybe take a break. Maybe wait till the next day, maybe wait an hour or two. Maybe wait till people are off work or about to leave work. So you can look at some of that stuff. There are tools that can show you the better times of day for your particular account based on your history. I've recently started testing a few accounts with Hype Fury. I was pretty impressed with it for trying to help evoke engagement stuff. I was a little surprised, in fact, at some of it. That it was, I saw some effectiveness with it. You can see from the ranking factors that if you have stuff that has good engagement, then the next time you post, you may get really good engagement again, or you may get good exposure. More people may see it. So some things you can do for that are to try to increase your engagement per tweet. So you have a tweet, you've posted it, of course, for commercial accounts, you go, okay, some people on Twitter saw it then, I'll wait a few hours, I'll post it again. I did some of that with like the announcement for this presentation. I did a little lightweight bit of it. What you can also do is go, okay, I posted it, then I'm gonna retweet my own post and get more engagement to that post. So then it bangs open even more people to see it because it's got more engagement numbers then, or more impressions. So that sort of thing actually does work. In some cases, I have heard of people, I was surprised to come across this tactic. There might be something to it. You post something flat, maybe delete it if it's not getting the engagement fairly rapidly. Maybe delete it, repost it in a different way. So they even said some things like, there's some types of language that indicate that it's going to be more boring to people. Like, we have, wait until you see what's happening next, or something like that. Watch our new commercial. No one wants to watch your commercial. There's some things like that you can kind of start to divine when you read the patents and when you understand those ranking factors, that the language like that may affect it. So look at the other people in your specific industry and see what's working and build off that. You could even build your own, set of phrases that seems to work better. Analyze your own tweets and see which ones did really well. You can post later on, a few days later, link to your own tweet that embeds, the tweet within it. So Twitter will show that, and that can help build more to it. One of the things I love to do, post something, one of your recent things that's important to you, pin it to the top. So each person that comes to your profile after that with your other tweets that aren't about that will see that and interact with it. I've also seen some lift if you have a tweet you like, spend a little bit of advertising money to engagement with it, and then stop advertising, and it still can get some exposure. So there are a few things like that. You want to try to increase the engagement with the tweets, and that means not only is that going to become more visible to other people, at least in current time frame, but it makes it so that like your engagement scores and interestingness are higher with your account, so that the next time you post something, they're going to show it to more people. It's a good reason to interact with other folks. The big sin that people have always done with social media is, well, I don't want to interact with other people. I just want to post stuff to get people to come to my blog all the time. So I'm ignoring everyone else, and I just post links every so often. And if you do that, you've shot yourself in the foot, because with Twitter, it's taking into account that people are interested in your stuff. And one of the signals is if you've interacted with them, if they've interacted with you. One way to get people to look at your stuff and interact with you is to interact with them. And I'm not saying that I'm artificial with you all. I actually do like interacting with people. I'm not just doing it to try to make you look at my tweets. But that's one thing that's super effective, is interacting with the community, and they seem to have rewarded it in the algorithm.
So I have a question about the fact that Twitter is looking at your other apps.
Potentially. So I'll give the caveat that I really should have at the beginning. As with all patents, you don't know that they're using them necessarily. All of these companies put out tons of patents. Twitter's put out a lot. I've reviewed ones that were very specific to rankings and then to spam and stuff, in addition to some other stuff. But I worked for Verizon. I helped write patents. I helped I developed some patents. We got some patents granted with some of my work. I helped other researchers with their patents and stuff. And major corporations, the tradition always was, if you've discovered some unique IP, then let's register it so nobody else can use it and they can pay us fees. So it doesn't mean that you use it within the company. There's lots of discoveries that Verizon had and got patents for that they've never ever used. I'm a little crushed about some of my patents. No, but that's what happens. So my caveat is, I reviewed the patents, and these are ranking factors that are mentioned in them. Some of them, as you can see, based on, if you read Twitter's blog posts about their ranking algorithm, if you read also some of their blog posts from their researchers that are just posting about research and machine language and processing and stuff, then you start to see that a lot of the ranking factors that I've listed really do look like they're probably using them. So that one's the one of them that's, it seems suspect, and yet there are articles out there that, at least on Android phones, and I haven't done thorough research about all models or about all operating systems, that you can, as an app developer, get information back on what other apps are on the phone and when they were installed or last used, so that you can figure out if those are causing you conflicts with your own application. And that makes some sense, even though it seems like a terrible privacy issue. So
It's okay. I'm
I
about
don't.
to download a men's health app for myself. Maybe even a dating app.
Well, the thing that came out recently in terms of privacy, because of changes in law potentially coming from the Supreme Court, were menstruation tracking apps and stuff. And that suddenly reveals things like gender, because I'm unlikely, well, actually, I could see why I might want to use one of those. But generally speaking, I don't have that kind of app on my phone. And so they can start to get really accurate when they put some of these things together with other data, especially that, what is your gender and things like that. In the sense that it's possible.
So would it be safer for our social media people? For the most part, we schedule our tweets, but would it be safer for whenever they're tweeting to only tweet from their desktop to avoid any confusion? And if we are a company that has, well, we have VPN, so everybody has the same IP address, not the same device.
Yeah.
Is that going to cause any?
I don't think so. They have to take that into account because that's pretty common.
Okay.
You go to a coffee shop and some, sharing the same network with other people. With apps, you get a device ID for usually with the usage and stuff. Like if I'm using Twitter, they're probably getting my device ID on my app. I will say that they have probably generally a little bit higher confidence level with using mobile apps than desktops, because using desktops, it's kind of harder to, it's easier for bots or for machines to imitate humans. And so, but they look at a lot of that stuff. So like in the sign up process for an account, a human user receives back a lot of things from the server. So I go to their homepage or whatnot. There's lots of images, style sheets, JavaScript. So there's lots of queries back to the server. When a bot tries to register, log in, then there haven't been all of those server interactions oftentimes, because the bot creator is very unsophisticated and is just going, okay, I'm just going to send the login information and not worry about pulling back all the elements from the homepage or the login page or the sign up page. And so they take that into account. They go, okay, patent, that's an anomaly. And when we start seeing some anomalies, we start thinking that's suspect, and we can downgrade the account or suspend it or make them do a CAPTCHA. So anyway, I think there's some benefits to using cell phones, but lots of people have to do it with desktops for managing corporate accounts and things. So it's not a big deal, especially it's really good if you have like some history of the account built up. You've used it for a while. It shouldn't be an issue.
And then what spammy things do people do unintentionally? Like, I would say, like, what's the biggest mistake that makes you look like spam?
Oh, wow. So when they are talking about these policing algorithms, like I kind of mentioned, about being blocked for being obnoxious to someone or whatnot, they're taking into account a few different things, kind of things that people don't like or that are annoying. So if you like tweeted a whole bunch on a hashtag that's real popular, so let's say a Dallas Cowboys hashtag is super popular, and you keep going, buy our pizza, buy our pizza, buy our pizza, they're gonna downgrade you real fast. I don't know. I haven't thought about what's the most common type of activity that people would do that's going to fall under one of those kind of aspects that reduces their ranking potential. But it's things like that. You don't want to be annoying to people. You don't want to be harassing or anything like that. Mentioning someone is bad. It's against, I mean, like you keep mentioning them. You're like, hey, pay attention, pay attention, pay attention. Please, you would love our product. Please, take into account, we'll send you a freebie. You don't want to do that. And the other thing is unsolicited tweets is it's somewhat vague category. But there used to be companies and people that would promote their stuff. And, I thought about building an app that did this, where you're monitoring the feed of tweets, and someone in the area is like, oh, I don't know what we're going to fix for dinner tonight. And you're like, hey, we have a pizza on, business on the corner, come get a discount. That's an unsolicited tweet. Now, Twitter does allow some things that they call inferred mentions. If someone mentions you, then you can tweet them back. So if you're McDonald's and someone mentions your company or one of your product names or whatever, you can tweet them back. But you wouldn't want to just tweet John Smith out of the blue if he hasn't in some way mentioned you. So inferred mentions could be things like, oh, I'm just writing my tweet. Oh, I really loved my Whopper today. That's an inferred mention. An actual mention is to use the @ symbol and go McDonald's. So they allow some inferred mention stuff. So you could get away with it if people are mentioning something in a way that indicates that they might want a response from you. So the bar is a little higher for corporate and commercial type accounts, because I can go as a person, individual user, and go, I don't know, hey, Joe Biden, you should come through and see my, artwork at my gallery when you come through town. Probably, no problem. But if I was doing that, especially in bulk, and then, doing it to a lot of people that were unsolicited, then it starts to look like spammy behavior. And at some point it hits a threshold. They have a lot of different systems that have different thresholds for stuff, and you don't know what it is, and they're changing that all the time. So you just don't want to be annoying with what you're doing, really. You don't want to be too aggressive. Read the Twitter rules and follow them, and then you won't run aground of that stuff. But, things like, oh, we don't need to set up a cover image. People are just looking at the tweets. It's actually contraindicated. You want to fill out your profile information with as much as you're comfortable with or makes sense to put in there. Twitter accounts that don't have description text, very suspect. Twitter accounts that look like a proper name with a whole bunch of numbers behind them, that looks like a very suspect thing. Twitter accounts that share the same profile image as lots of other profiles, that's a suspect thing. So there's a lot of these things that start to create a pattern. And if you have more components of that kind of bot pattern, then you're not going to get very far in the system.
Okay, and then one last question, and I'll let other people speak. So you mentioned a lot of different ranking factors. If we only had to focus on like 2 or 3 as a top ranking factor to really get the most bang from our buck for Twitter, what would you recommend focusing on?
So in a way, going through the Twitter ranking factors can be a little bit frustrating for those of you marketers that are trying to understand how to promote, because a lot of these are hard to game.
Okay.
So you're not really looking to understand how it works and how they're doing interestingness. And so, you want to do these things, these activities that start increasing your potential engagement and stuff. So you want to kind of generally stay on topic. You want to associate yourself with accounts that have that topic. You want to tweet about that topic. You want to engage with other people that talk about that topic a little bit. Engagement is a good thing. So you don't necessarily want to just post self-promotional links. I mean, there are a few different rules that people have talked about. The rule of thirds: 1/3 can be self-promotion, and the other should be other stuff. 1/3 should be entertainment. Third should be like, interacting with other people's stuff or whatever. And then there's like the 80-20 rule. Okay, 20% of the time you might post about yourself, 80% of the time you post about other stuff. You don't have to follow a formula like that, but it is kind of good to look at those rules and go, okay, you shouldn't just look down your line of tweets and go, okay, it's me, 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 or else it gets really boring to everybody else and you're insufferable and nobody wants to follow you or interact with you. So basically, interaction is good, or even cultivating interaction. So if you are a company, you don't just post promotional stuff. How about posting some periodic surveys? How could we change this product so that you would like it more? And getting feedback from it, and even redoing that a few times so that some of your customer base will see it. Tell us, we're doing this survey again to make sure we understand, what are things that we could do. Here's 3 things to vote on. What could we do to improve? Who would be more interested in getting a freebie this weekend? There can be some of that stuff where you reward people for posting or interacting with you. You can get away with a little of that. You want to be careful about things like sweepstakes and stuff that have various legal rules and may fall under rules of the social media platforms and stuff. But there's a lightweight way to do some of those things. Or, if we get 500 retweets of this, we're going to donate, $3,000 to the local orphanage. That's a really great community building thing. And you'll get some engagement. And then the next tweet you post will be seen by more people. So think about things that can increase engagement and interaction with your audience. Audience building is difficult with Twitter. You can, give discounts to people if they, follow you. We'll give you a real world discount if you show us that you followed us on Twitter. I've seen restaurants and stuff do things like that, and I think it can be effective. I don't know that it scales very well, but some things like, local pipe parts store can find it very hard to find people that would want to follow it on Twitter. It may just be that Twitter's not ideal for some things like that. B2B stuff is maybe iffy, it's really difficult if it's a non-sexy topic. If you're a hotel, no problem. If you're a restaurant, no problem. You've got reams of content that you can post. You've got lots of interest in your stuff. There's sexy things that do better in social media and are easier to do. But some of if it's kind of a dull thing or very limited niche audience, whatever, you're just not going to have lots of followers.
That must have blown you out.
Well, thanks for having me, and it's great to see you all. I know everyone here, so that's kind of cool. I actually brought some tchotchkes since it's not, I didn't know how many people are going to these anymore because it used